right, so this is a conversation with not a new harvester. You're not a new harvester, but
a newer,
I guess.
You're old.
Okay, that's rude. Garner has been harvesting for about 5 years, like you mentioned. He was probably, I don't know, you were probably the third person that I trained. And everybody learns a little bit different. And so it was kind of an interesting thing to see what would resonate with people and what wouldn't. But I'm curious, what were your initial thoughts about EVH before you'd even touch the scope?
It looks easy.
Looks easy.
It looks easier than it is. I remember watching people do it. I'm like, oh, you just poke that thing in there and then you just pull that thing out and there's some burning going on and it's not a big deal.
A couple little pokes. Yeah, right?
Quickly realized there's obviously a lot more to it, as I'm sure if you're not already doing it or you're going to get into it, you'll quickly realize that it is more challenging than it appears when just watching a screen. You know, like you said, I've been doing it for 5 years and now I've trained 2 people myself. And I remember being frustrated, angry at certain times about, my inability to do things as well as Chris or some of the other guys that we worked with. And I use that to now help train other people. Like I understand this part's frustrating to learn. So how I learned it was this way or that way. And it seems to resonate. So we want to take those experiences, I guess, and help you guys.
What do you remember about the first time you had a chance to use the scope?
What do you do with your hands? Where to put your hands? How to hold it? It's a muscle memory that you've never done. It sounds silly, but it really is. You've never held a certain thing this way to try to harvest something from the inside of someone else. So those skills, it just is like confuses the brain, I feel like. Like it's very kind of like sensory overload because you just have never tried to do anything like it.
Did you play video games as a child?
Some. No, I wouldn't say I was a gamer, but
yeah, I was not a gamer. I mean, I played them, but there is something to be said about looking at a screen and not at your hands, because that's one of the, as you're building that muscle memory, you're constantly looking down at your hands. How do I get it to, you know what needs to happen on the screen, but you can't get your hands to do that. And so there's a lot of fumbling around a little bit at first, but once you get that muscle memory, it gets a little bit easier. Would you say that's true?
For sure. The one thing that I think did help is if you work in a practice where you're doing thoracic surgery as well, so you're doing, VATS or laparoscopic surgery, if you had experience in general surgery, camera driving is a similar type skill where you're watching a screen while doing a lot with your hands. So having some experience with that made it a little easier to pick up on.
How many cases do you think it took before you felt not proficient, but that you weren't like frustrated?
50.
Okay.
Maybe more.
Yeah.
I definitely wasn't early.
It takes, and
for every one that I did end up feeling good about, there was like the next 10 that I did not. So
the difficulty isn't linear. So it's not like you start with easy and then you just get harder. It's like easy one and then you're like, I got this.
Yeah.
And then you have 2 or 3 really bad ones and you're like, this is terrible. Yeah. And then it kind of ebbs and flows. But the way that we do things, which I don't know if you're watching this and you're going to be performing this procedure, one thing that's very helpful, instead of having to do all of it all at the same time, is to just do little portions of it. Just what I would do for Garner or for everyone I've trained basically is to say, okay, I've gotten you started. I'm going to give you 5 minutes with the dissector, see what you can get done. And at first it's like millimeters, it's just everyone's very nervous and very, hesitant. And then, the next time we harvest, I say, okay, you got 5 minutes. And then we get a little further that time and a little further. Same thing with the harvester. Here's the harvester. You're going to have 5 minutes. Here's a branch. And I might even set it up so it's perfect. So all you got to do is just get the feel for pushing through that branch. Hopefully we get more and more accomplished until now you've got 10 minutes. Now you have 15 minutes. And then pretty soon it's like, okay, I'm just going to stand here until you need help or something like that.
Yeah. And that was huge. And I think it's a good tip for you guys when you start, or even when you're watching this course. We're going to give you a lot of solid foundation to then build upon, but maybe focus on one section of it. Maybe it's the dissection. Maybe you use that over and over again until you feel comfortable, and then move on to the harvester. But focusing on one thing and slowly building, it definitely is a good way to learn EVH.
For sure. And then if you are harvesting and you're struggling with a certain area, come back to these videos, watch whatever section you're struggling with, and then tell whoever you're working with to say, hey, I'm struggling with taking branches. Can you do the dissection and then give me more time to work on the branches, or whatnot, because there still is a time constraint. You're trying to get the conduit out in a reasonable time. And what else was helpful to you in your training, as you remember? That was a curveball.
No.
What were some of the other things that were helpful to you as you were learning?
Like I said, we were lucky to have Chris there, who had quite a bit of experience, and like I said, trained some other people. But some of you that don't, and we did do this, but rely on your rep. Depending on what device you're using, they all have reps that can come to your facility, set up some cases, try to get 3 or 4 cabbages over the next couple of days, and they'll sit there and do them with you start to finish. And just having another set of eyes, another set of hands to show you how to do certain things is very beneficial. So definitely lean in to your reps for whatever device you're using.
And not every company has clinical representatives. Reach out to us, reach out to other people, and just say, hey, here's what I'm struggling with. Here's what the surgeon feedback is that my branches are there's char, or there's avulsions, or there's too much bleeding, or I take too long. Like all those things, valid questions. But let's talk about it. Take a video of your harvest. You're welcome to send it to us. We'd love to kind of go through it, annotate it, talk with you over Zoom or something like that. And just give you pointers and things.
There's going to be times that you're mad at yourself, that you're mad at whoever's training you. It's just a frustrating and humbling skill to learn. But push through it, because it's a very rewarding and useful skill to have mastered and have in your tools for the rest of your practice.
What advice would you give yourself if you could go back to the Garner that was starting after your very first harvest? If you were going out for a drink with that guy, what would you tell him?
Yeah, slow down. Like I said, I mean, honestly, I wanted to be, and this was in regards to just training in general. You want to be good at your job, and you want to be good at EVH. So my expectations were high, and I think that's not a bad thing. But if this is going to be a challenge, then it gives you a little better mindset of how you're going to learn and how you're going to succeed at doing this. Where we've had people that expect to be the best, and then they realize they're not, and it's just crushing. And you're not going to be the best the first time you pick it up. So take your time. Understand it's going to be, a learning curve, and almost manage your expectations.
I think your goals can be lofty. You can say, I want to be the best harvester this institution's ever seen. I think that's great.
Yeah.
But have a realistic outlook on the path to get there. It's not going to be easy right away. It's not easy really for anybody. It doesn't come naturally to anybody. So there are people that learn a little faster than others, and that's fine. But don't go in there and think, I'm going to be the most amazing thing from the get-go, because you're just setting yourself up for frustration. So like Garner said, manage your expectations. Yeah, I didn't know that not everybody could do it. I just assumed if I could do it, then everybody could do it. And we hired a gentleman who struggled quite a bit. And the surgeons didn't really want to use the veins that he had taken because they were beat up and they were stretched, and the conduit was not great. And in the process of that, I said, well, let's see what else is out there. And I found the Endoscope, and previously I had made fun of it. I thought it was dumb. Because that's what you do. You like what you have, and you make fun of everything else. Maybe you don't, but I did. So we thought it was gimmicky. We thought it was dumb. And once I started using it, I said, man, this is so much more straightforward. So he had already resigned, but he was still working. I had him use it, and he said, that is way easier. And I watched him harvest, and I said, wow, he did great with that new scope. So that was obviously going to make training easier for his replacement, et cetera. And ever since then, when I talk to harvesters all over the country and the world, honestly, people have the same types of struggles everywhere with certain scopes. And so this one minimizes a lot of those struggles, and we just love it. So, but we are not paid to say that. They did not pay us to put that in this. But yeah, that's where we're at.
And this training, to make a point of that, is very broad-based in terms of the skills. It's very similar. The scopes are all very similar and do a lot of the same thing. So if you are at a facility that uses a different scope, this shouldn't keep you from watching this or using this training course. This course covers much more than just how to push the buttons on the scope and what does what. It's very much how to dissect, how to harvest, how to make an incision, how to close, how to irrigate, post-op problems, pre-op positioning, are all things that you are going to have to do no matter what scope you're using.
Yeah, the lessons in this course are good theory and are appropriate for any scope that you use. Of course, we've noted the differences here and there, but if you have watched this course prior to getting a job and you go out and start at a hospital that has a competing product, don't panic. The lessons still apply, but the actual controls of the scope might be a little bit different, and we've tried to highlight those throughout the course, but don't panic, don't fear. This is just to provide you a foundation for whatever scope it is that you use. And obviously, the ultimate goal is not what scope you use or how fast you are. It's to produce a exceptional conduit to use for whatever bypass you're doing. So keep that in mind, that is the ultimate goal at the end of the day.